Welcome back for an all-new feature build, this spectacular 1964 Pontiac Bonneville. It's long, it's low, and it's supercharged. Iain, it's fantastic that we can finally coordinate our schedules to get together in Old Sydney town. We're at Haltech's HQ, and your Pontiac Bonneville has been a journey.
It's been quite a roller coaster. It was about 7 years to actually get the car driving, and we've just spent the last couple of years just trying to refine it. I'm not a mechanic, I'm not a professional car builder, so we've gone through things and tried to make it as good as possible, but it feels amazing to be driving it.
There's a lot of project cars that don't get to that point, and this has got a backstory before this particular model.
I shouldn't actually own this car. That's the story is that I actually had a 1962 model, and unfortunately there was a shed fire and I lost that car. About 10 days later, a friend of mine messaged me on Facebook and said, hey, a guy is selling a 64 model, but it's a 2-door, not a 4-door, and it's already airbagged and it looks cool. You should hit him up. And so the car was in Huntington Beach. Kobe Gewirtz, who has a very famous striped hot rod at the moment that's doing big things online, he owned the car and it become surplus to his requirements. So in early 2015, brought it over to Australia, and the shenanigans started almost immediately.
And the Pontiac brand, you've got a connection with it?
I've always loved fast cars, and Pontiac was General Motors' performance division. So in this era, they had factory drag cars with aluminium body panels and these gigantic engines, and they were winning Daytona 500 and the Southern 500. They were winning big NASCAR races. Mickey Thompson was running 400 miles an hour on the Salt with a car he built at home with 4 Pontiac engines in it. This era was really exciting, particularly for me, because I love my fast cars. Everyone says, what is it? And then people will generally, they see the stacked headlights and they have a guess that it's a Ford Fairlane. But it is actually, it's a 1964 Pontiac Bonneville Coupe, sold new by DiGiulio Pontiac and GMC dealership to a guy called Henry Giambruno. One of the things I didn't know I was actually getting with the car was the full paperwork history of this car. I've got the original black and gold California license tags that the car drove out of the dealership with. I've got the quote Henry got before he ordered the car. So
I noticed even the number plate frame has got that nice throwback. So 2015, the car arrives out of the container. It certainly didn't look like it sits today.
No, look, I knew I was buying a project, and so there was a shoebox sized rust hole in the top of one back guard, and I drove it twice and then the transmission blew up. These cars, you can't buy spare parts for those transmissions, the original 4-speed autos. That started the whole build, and then that led to, I rebuilt the Pontiac engine. While we were waiting for some parts to come in, I started actually chipping some of the rust out of the car, and that led me to bare metaling the entire car.
There was some serious bog, wasn't there?
Both 8-foot back guards were probably about 30 mils deep with body filler on both sides for repairs that would have been no more than about 5 centimetres long. But these were just cheap cars. For many, many, many years, they were just cheap cars. And even to this day, a 64 Impala is probably worth 30% more than this car. Brad Power up at Cool As Hot Rods painted the car for me because he actually has a booth big enough to fit it. And it's not always simple to get a gigantic land yacht into them.
Ultimately, you ended up with a really exceptional Resto-Mod because there's modern electronics, there's good brakes, there's the engine package we'll talk about shortly.
The whole goal was just to cruise the beaches of the Central Coast, low and slow, with all my mates on board. And then as we started fixing things, and I had other cars at the time, and we were going to a lot of different interstate car runs. We were driving these cars 1,000 Ks in one direction through some pretty oppressive weather conditions. I started realizing that actually driving my old cars reliably and regularly was way more important. So that's where we started looking at the electronics. And I was very fortunate that by the time this car got to the wiring stage, Haltech were just releasing their Nexus R5 and their PD16 PDM, which meant that we could then wire the car tip to tail with brand new modern style wiring, and I don't have to play around with janky 60s style ignition switches or any of that unreliable stuff. The engine is no longer a Pontiac V8. It ended up coming to fruition that this engine was built for a Mighty Car Mods project that I was helping the boys with. Marty and Moog turned around and said, you know what, your car needs an engine. We'd sold the Pontiac engine and the transmission and the diff to fund the paint. So we put the Harrop Supercharged LQ4 into this with a 4L80 transmission from Hughes, and we had Geelong Diffs build a 9-inch diff to handle that power.
Troy from Warspeed Industries has done an excellent job on the engine combination, and we'll hopefully catch up with him a little bit later to dive into that. But you're right, cars from the 60s, from a wiring point of view, it's just redundant. Like, you really need to use modern engine control, which Haltech provides.
The great thing about that is that we set the wiring loom out, it's beautifully made. We were able to put all the parameters into the Nexus to then give it what each function needed to do. And then we just programmed a keypad, and I go headlights, start, stop. I can have hazard lights, which these cars never came with. I've now got a rear demister. I've got electric air conditioning. I've got speed rated power steering. I've got traction control. I can tell you now, like, this car really needs that control, because even at its gigantic size, it's a real handful.
Well, the powertrain, the engine combination and controlling that has absolutely got a modern touch. The paint, wheels, tyres, suspension, it definitely pops on the road. So what was the inspiration in terms of colour, wheels?
They never sold a green Pontiac, a proper green Pontiac in 1964 in the full-size range. Emerald green is a colour that I don't think gets used on cars as much as it probably could. I wanted something also, it had to work with chrome, it had to work with a variety of wheels, because I do like to chop and change my wheels a bit. It's simple, it's elegant, it looks 60s. The trim is just a simple retrim job, because I wanted the car to essentially, if you see it parked at a car show, you walk past and you think it's just a 60s car. The wheels that are on it are a little bit different. I love my historic racing, historic motorsport, and particularly Group C Australian touring cars. And Morwas, these are a modern version of a Morwa wheel. They're a 15-inch centre spun out of high-grade aluminium by GT Wheels in Brisbane. I wanted a good-sized tyre on it and a modern tyre, because I'm going to be driving the car quite a bit. So we went to a step lip 17.
That's one of the beauties with three-piece wheels. You can get good packaging, use a modern tyre and make it fit.
One of the difficulties with Pontiacs is that they don't share many common parts. There's nothing in the chassis is shared in terms of suspension or drivetrain with a, say, Chevy, which have a really big aftermarket available to them. So the three-piece wheel, I needed to do that, because I've got obviously the mini truck airbag suspension. Packaging in this car has been the single biggest hurdle to get over, because for all of its gigantic space, there is no room. It's good fun, it works, and the proof is now rolling down the freeway at 100 k's an hour that, to me, it is the best way to build a 60s car that doesn't have the sort of support of like an Impala or something like that. I've had fast cars and stuff in the past, and it's great to run a number. You kind of come home and tell your friends and family that you did a thing, but to be able to share your hobby with your loved ones is really, really rewarding for me.
Exactly. I think we should go for a cruise to Warspeed Industries and speak to the man about the engine combo.
Let's go see Troy.
The cam's got a nice note. It's not outrageous.
No, I think that it's really easy to go overboard with the chop, and like I love real choppy cammed cars. My daily driver ute used to be, like, when I had that, it had quite a bit of lope to it. But for a car like this, when you're going to try to actually do a lot of miles in it and live with it, I think it's one thing to sound cool cruising the Summernats cruise route, but I'd rather it actually just works. The drive-by-wire throttle is one of those things that just makes the car super livable for all the power that it makes, you can tune the pedal to how fast you're actually going. So at slow speeds, it's nice and doughy, makes the car very, very maneuverable, which is important with a car this size.
We've just cruised over from Haltech to Warspeed Industries to meet Troy, the man that put together the Bonneville engine package. Great to be here, mate.
Thanks for coming over, appreciate it.
So it's not an exotic engine, makes a ton of power, but it's let's say a fairly regular LS combination that a lot of customers
100%, yeah. Like we do a lot of packages similar to that because not everyone has the coin to build something like this with aftermarket parts. So it's good to be able to achieve a nice power level using factory componentry. GM developed such a good engine, and if you can keep that engine very similar to the GM window and just improve it, then big gains come from that.
I think the donor engine came out of the river somewhere in the US, and so talk us through block, rotating assembly.
Yeah, so obviously I think Iain tried to find the most rustiest one we could buy, which was good, but it was a challenge, and we got the boys at Jenkins to clean it and machine it all up for us. We sublet our bottom end machining out. But yeah, so it's a LQ9 base block. We discarded crank rods and pistons out of it, and then started with all new package. It's got a Texas Speed crankshaft, conrod, and a Wiseco piston deal. And then it also runs a set of Texas Speeds PRC cylinder heads on it. LS3 configuration, but we then also, being that it was an LQ9, it's a Gen 3 based block, but we blanked that off, went to a Gen 4 timing cover sensor on it, and then gave it the 58/4 position configuration for the timing control.
Sure.
I just think it's a better configuration for it.
LQ being iron block, nice and robust for boost. The camshaft, it's got a nice lump to it, but it's not overly choppy.
Yeah, it's a nice grind that they selected for it. I think it's in the 230s and 240s, but it's sedate enough that you can cruise on the street every day, and then obviously put your foot down and the blower takes over and fixes all problems, and there you go, you've got your 700-800 at the rear with a nice street manners, that's for sure.
And our relationship goes back a long way with superchargers and the whole range of LS. You've got a lot of experience with those.
Yeah, I mean, we've been developing all sorts of packages combined between the two of us, or between the two companies, I should say. So yeah, we definitely like the Harrop. That's our preferred supercharger in all applications, and we generally get guys ringing us for the traditional style blown engine, as we're known for doing as well, but we're pushing more and more people into having that 1,000+ horsepower under the bonnet and not seen, rather than something that's out the bonnet and you can't drive it. So yeah, they're definitely a nice package for all-round track and street use.
Yeah, street ability is really important, as well as getting the performance numbers. The top mount configuration, like the Pontiac has, is you can take an LS1 lower manifold, LS3 port, or even the LS7 port shape. So I think that's great for customers that have got different engines that might be swapping it out of something that they've picked up somewhere along the way. And then this particular combo is really the burger with the lot. It's the inverted style 2650. It's got the big intercooler brick, and you've been working on something pretty innovative in terms of big throttle plates.
Yeah, I think anything in front of your rotors is a restriction. So the bigger we can have it, the better. But obviously this is only for certain applications. Yep. Your guy with an LS1 is not going to put 130mm throttle body on it because he's going to have no drivability on the street.
And what's so impressive with Warspeed and the diversity of the engines, there's the extreme LS combination, and you also do a lot of NA combinations as well.
Yeah, like I'm only a one-man business. Sometimes that's a little bit hard, but we do try and stick to that LS platform. LTs are starting to make their way through. We've got a few projects happening at the moment that we're doing, but obviously people want different things. That's cool and all, but it's such a limited use. It's an event car only, whereas something along the lines of this or the Bonneville engine is street and event. Like if he wanted to take the power cruise, he could. He'd probably get hit by all the other cars going around the corner because he'll be at the start and the end of the corner. That style of package will do whatever you need it to do.
We all know people love blowers and big boost, but NA combinations that last is also a specialty.
Yeah, I mean, we've been lucky enough now to be working with the V8 Super Ute series for the last 4 years. So they had diesel power and wasn't very impressive and pretty unreliable. So the idea came to us to swap them over to an LS3 package. And yeah, we're into the 4th year now and it's been very, very good. The category is capped at 24 cars at each event, but we've done well over 30 engines for that series now.
And it's a spec series in terms of powertrain. They run Hiluxes and BT50s.
Yeah, so
Rangers.
5 or 6 different chassis, but one common engine supplier, and all common parts. So they're all built to an exactly the same number. They all make within 1% of each other at the power. So yeah, it's been very, very reliable and a very good series. Off that has branched off in now to off-road racing is becoming a lot more popular back in Australia again. It sort of died for a while, but it's coming back since they created a new 7-litre class, and that's bringing a lot of other people back, which has now opened up avenues for LS packages to transition into off-road racing. So we've got quite a few of them on the go at the moment. Obviously they're a complete bespoke item. It's nothing that's off the shelf type componentry. It's all, you know, working close with the cylinder head developers like Higgins, and then the blocks and the velocity drive sump pans and all those things.
Intakes, the works.
Everything, yeah, coming up with a very robust item that's going to survive, because they're out there for 500 kilometers bouncing and doing everything, and you know, so even
Wide
putting
open.
it together is a lot more attention to detail. When you think you've got, you know, the grade of bolts and accessories that's going to be fine for a street car, putting into a race car or race truck is a completely different situation again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an absolute credit to you. We love being partners. The innovation that you're pushing, your brand is getting recognised in the US. I know you've got some good associations with some of the manufacturers there, and there's even some of the Aussie boys up there competing.
Yeah,
Exciting.
Yeah, the US market's obviously a lot bigger market here in Australia. It was never even in my thoughts that I'd have an engine over there, let alone having, I think there's a fleet of 5 cars over there at the moment, and then we're starting to do some engine packages for guys over there, distributing parts over there, and that obviously, you know, having partners with so many high-end brands like Harrop gives us exposure to other companies over there, because we're working with you, people recognise and respect your brand, so then they know if we're part of that brand, then it just, everyone's respected together as one, rather than having a dodgy little company working with someone else. It just doesn't work. So yeah.
I think we've got a fantastic network and huge capabilities here in Australia, like the companies that collaborate to produce combinations that they're world class, and that's hugely impressive. Thank you, mate, for the opportunity to visit Warspeed Industries. It's been well overdue. We've got a couple of projects in the pipeline, so let's make sure we do it again.
Yep, definitely.
Thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.